This is the California Liberty Project podcast.
Welcome back to the California Liberty Project. I really appreciate everyone being here once again. It's great to see you. We're growing, especially on all of our audio platforms. That's where you're listening to us, more than likely, on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts, and then we're going to be loading this up to YouTube and Rumble as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Make sure to follow us on socials. Just a quick reminder. We are at CA_Liberty_PROJ on X. And I'm going to try to devote more energy over there because that is a social media platform that doesn't get squelched. Like Instagram, where we were growing, we're now squelched there. But follow us because we still post. Instagram, we're at California Liberty Project. But let's jump right in with our guest. This is a returning guest, very interesting fellow. Mike Netter is our guest, and I want to give him this introduction. Very interesting guy, very interesting Californian. He's got a lot to say, which is great because I can hand him the baton, and he has strong thoughts. And we like strong thoughts and opinions and men and women of action here. So Mike Netter is a KABC radio host, and he is the co-chair of Rebuild California once again. Second time on the show. Mike, welcome, and thank you very much for making time to be here on the California Liberty Project.
Greg, I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for having me. I've got to tell you, I'm not sure the name California Liberty is something Gavin Newsom would agree with, because I think lately Gavin's kind of been against liberty in general, and especially liberty in California.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, let's get into all that because the guy claims to, on the left, Democrats like to talk about democracy and freedom. They use it interchangeably, which is strange because we're a republic. But putting all that pedantry aside, let's talk about what Gavin Newsom is up to, in your opinion. He's put himself in the news throughout the summer. He was butthurt. He was jilted at the aisle because it was Kamala's turn. He thought maybe there was some way he was going to get himself in there. This is my opinion. When clearly Biden was teetering and tottering on the brink, and then they had to throw him out. But now he has found ways to remain in the national news, remain in the conversation, whether it's on oil and gas prices in this state, which now he's jacking up gasoline prices in our surrounding states, and whether or not it's vetoing the occasional really radical bill, a social bill, a parents' rights bill, these kinds of things. Sometimes he likes to pretend he's a moderate to get himself back in the headlines. But what do you think Newsom is doing, broadly speaking? And we can talk about a broad, high-level overview of what's happening in California in general.
Well, let's start with politics in California in general. I talk about this all the time. Let me start with an overview. As many of you know, or if you don't know, you're about to find out whether you like it or not, as Gavin would say. I'm one of the guys that started the recall of Gavin Newsom that made the ballot, okay? And I think it's important to note that the reason the recall didn't go through, the reason Gavin gets elected, the reason the state is, to quote the band, the shape we're in, is because it's not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's the party of apathy. And I talk about that all the time. And let me be a little bit clear on that. So there are approximately, allegedly, 22 million registered voters in California. There are about 10 million Democrats, 5.3 million Republicans, about 6.5 million NPPs, and people of other parties, so to speak, that are scattered. And when we talk about voter turnout, much of the problem we have is that voters don't turn out. We look at the top level turnout. Look, we had a 55% turnout for president, but in the downstream offices, the voter turnout is really anemic. And the California politicians, especially on the Democratic side, play on that. They're really not doing their job of running the state of California. What they're doing their job, they think their day job is running the party of apathy. Let me give you some examples. You brought up a great one with Gavin himself. And Gavin's kind of the poster child or lead guy for this. The problem we have in California politics is nobody gives an expletive deleted or rodent's posterior, you can fill in as I say in radio, but actually what's going on in California. What they care about is their next job. And think about Gavin specifically. He was a poor waif of a child way back when, according to his story, okay, who got adopted by a guy, if you will, not literally but metaphorically, Gordon Getty. And by the way, where did Gordon Getty make all his money?
Oil.
There you go. Bing, bing, bing. A box of Snickers to you. He made it in oil. So we'll put that aside for further in the conversation. Got appointed to a board and then a commission and then ran for mayor of San Francisco. And as you know, San Francisco is in fine shape. Okay, maybe not. So Gavin didn't do a very good job in San Francisco and then decided, as all California politicians, well, I'm going to move up and run for lieutenant governor. And he did that, and the party of apathy elected lieutenant governor, where he ran for 8 years to kind of sit in the wings to be running for governor. Now, today, and I don't want to focus on just Gavin here, Greg, what I want to focus on is that today there is so much talk about Gavin running for president, etc., etc. But let's talk about the person actually running for president, Kamala Harris, for example. Kamala, Curmudgeon, whatever the heck her name is, right? Interesting on her when you take a look at her right now in the state of California politics. She ran for DA, served a term, ran for Attorney General, served a term. And by the way, she ran for Attorney General, didn't fill out her second term, and decided she wanted to run for senator. And when, by the way, in California, this is how the chain works, when she decided to run for senator, her seat got backfilled by a guy named Xavier Becerra, right? And that guy was then picked by the governor, who happens to be a Democrat, and then becomes the incumbent, and Californians that do vote tend to elect the incumbent. But wait, there's more, as they say in late night commercials, because after she ran for senator, no sooner was she in office for a few months as she decided she was going to run for president and failed miserably at it, which is what they do, failing miserably upward, just like Gavin did in San Francisco. So then she decides, okay, I'm going to be Joe Biden's vice president. So when you think about Kamala Harris, she's typical, like Gavin Newsom, of what we have in California politics. Not people staying a term and doing their job, but looking for their next gig. And that's the problem we have. They're so concerned with their next. I want you to really think about this for a second, Greg. Gavin Newsom's biggest problem is he's not doing his job. Since he was allegedly reelected and survived the recall, the scoreboard is pretty simple. He's been doing other things. He spent time out of the state of California, running around campaigning for Joe Biden. He attends debates. He runs to the climate change conference overseas. And by the way, when Gavin Newsom's out of state, he's not, he's not actually a governor of California. Lieutenant governor officially is the person in charge.
Correct.
And then the layers below of these people that are elected with barely 35% of the vote, they're looking for their next job. They're trying to work their way up the ladder. Interesting, the current Attorney General of California, which is a pretty powerful position, is a guy named Rob Bonta. Rob Bonta was reelected as the incumbent because he was picked as Attorney General, right?
Correct.
By Gavin Newsom when Xavier Becerra said, Well, I'm not going to fill my second term because we've done such a marvelous job with unemployment and benefits in California, or maybe not. I'm going to go run all of it in the United States as head of Health and Human Services. And then Gavin picks Rob Bonta. Rob Bonta gets reelected as an incumbent by the party of apathy. And Rob Bonta is already saying, well, I'd like to run for governor, even though he hasn't done much this term. Got it? And so these Democrats aren't interested in really making the state they live in or the job they're doing better. They're interested in the next job, even though they've accomplished the Peter Principle, hitting the level of ineptitude ceiling fairly quick. So what I'm saying is really what we have is a problem in California where the Democrats do very good job, quite honestly, of working their way up through the ranks. They run for mayor, the party of apathy elects them, they keep moving up and up and up. And most Californians simply aren't paying attention. Now, before we get too deep into the issues, Greg, I'd like to ask you a question.
Shoot.
You ready?
Yeah.
Do you like water?
I do. I'm a big fan of water. Yes.
Most people are. I don't know of anybody of any political persuasion that doesn't like water, and California does a horrible job managing it. So Californians most would agree that we like water. Fair enough?
Yes. Fair point.
Okay. Now I'm going to assume because you're on this broadcast, and I doubt many people will be listening to this, who are Amish. Is that fair enough, Greg?
Fair assumption. Yes.
Then you
Yeah.
probably like electricity. Okay, with all due deference to the Amish, most people like electricity. California pays the highest rates for water because we do a horrible job of managing it. And we pay 33 cents per kilowatt hour compared to 17 cents, the national average. We are second only to Hawaii for electricity.
Correct.
And I bring that up because you don't think of electricity like you see the price at the pump. Once a month, there's a scream from a couple corners of my house, usually around the 10th or the 12th, and I think someone has been murdered in my home or someone has died.
Huh.
It's the utility bill, right?
Yes.
But you get that once a month, and so people aren't cognizant of the fact California's electricity rates are so high. Yet California continues to push an electric mandate, and we'll get into that in a second. And people are annoyed by the price of gas. We'll get into that later in the broadcast, so to speak. But I want to make it clear that water, electricity, which even if you don't drive a car, are something people generally like. Now,
Sure.
Greg, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I know a little bit about you, and assume you don't own a tent company. Is that fair?
I don't. I do not.
Right, 'cause
Unfortunately. Yeah. I'd
if
be
you
doing
did,
well.
the homeless
Yeah.
would be a great model. But
Correct.
California, if anybody who would invest 24 billion in a venture, if I was Elon Musk and gave you 24 billion, don't get too excited, folks out there. I'm not Elon Musk and I don't have 24 billion, but roll with my fictional story and gave it to you and came back 4 years later and said, how did you do with that 24 billion? I go, well, the problem you gave me to solve actually got about 25% worse. You go, dang, that's too bad. And you say, well, it's somebody else's fault. And you go, well, can you show me where the 24 billion went? And I go, I'll be honest, guys, I got no idea. You probably wouldn't even fire me. You would take me probably in a body bag to the top of the Empire State Building, fictional FBI if you're watching this, because I know you do, and throw me off the highest floor with no net underneath. Yet that is our California government attacking homelessness. And part of the problem we have today when these things get reported to the general public, and the reason and there's crime, of course, nobody's for crime, even the criminals don't want to get shot, but the majority of the public doesn't get these issues in sound bites. They don't pay attention like you and I do. Now, if I remember correctly, and I used to be absent-minded and I might be senile, for example, your background is in oil production and geothermal, that kind of thing. Is that about right?
Yeah, broadly speaking, energy. That's right.
Energy. And most people, and I have a little bit of a background in physics, in science, work for a major company. My minor's in computer science. But most people out there really don't give a rose posterior how it works. They just know on a given day it doesn't work. And the problem we have is why I like vodcasts, podcasts, broadcast, whatever cast you want to word you want to put in front of cast like this, is that our job is to really to simplify the message and say, look, if you like water, don't like paying too much for electricity, are appalled by what's happening at the pump, really don't like the homeless issue, which I don't even the homeless are like, yeah, and don't like crime, vote and vote different. And most importantly, not only vote for the top offices, but vote down ballot and make sure they vote for every office. Hell, I don't even care if you vote Democratic at this point. Shocking but true. What I really care is that to make sure that your vote gets counted. You know this about California, most people don't. We're not really a blue state. Most of the propositions that the left proposes don't get passed. They're about spending money. People are simply against, is it going to cost me money? I'm against it. But they don't pay attention to what the politicians are doing because the press, left, right, whatever, they have to fill a lot of words and make them complicated. So our job, quick pitch here, okay, at Rebuild California, which grew out of the recall, we're a statewide political movement, is to simplify the issues for you and your county and make sure that you get involved to pick the issue which you feel affects you the most and understand about it. And I'd be amiss if I didn't give my quick pitch here. Rebuild California on Facebook has we have over 250,000 members. We have a group per county. Join it. It's free. Okay? If you don't have that kind of money, I don't know what to tell you. But join the groups and get involved. Follow me on X at NetterMike because this is one of the things I use to try to simplify political issues and put them out there. And you'll find
Yes.
on there that I have a newsletter, Netter News, that we blast out around the state. Subscribe. Greg, guess how much that costs?
I'm guessing it's not too pricey.
It's free, okay? We do this simply because we care, and I'm going to be really honest, I don't like humidity and snow, and don't plan on moving from California because it's not the Democrats, it's the Republicans not voting, it's the NPPs not paying attention, it's the moderate Democrats who can't bring themselves to check a box so they don't vote at all. This is the problem that we have. And even the Democrats right now, as you see going on, and right now happens to be 9/20, I'm going to out whenever you're listening to this, it is the 20th of September. And if you go a little bit back in time, you will find that the Democrats are arguing right now, and they have a supermajority in the state assembly and state senate over what they could do apparently to make what they say to drive gas prices down, but the reality is too many of them apparently, and this is the truth, spent time in high school taking home economics instead of economics having to do with monetary policy, because even there's hardly a professor that you can find that says what they're doing makes sense. They're doing is to what you opened the show with, to simply push out their brand and for the average person to say, hey, they're trying to do something to drive my gas prices down. But they're not. And this is blowing up in their face, kind of like the pagers did over in Lebanon when the Israelis just rigged them.
Right. Well, let's get into that a little bit. Well, not the Patriots so much. That's a separate topic. Let's stick to California here. What we were just talking
I
about, what
like
you
the
just
metaphor,
mentioned.
though, don't you?
It's a great metaphor. I like that. I like it. Lots of great memes and whatnot. But here in California, okay, the special session. Newsom calls a special session. He doesn't want to let the headlines go to waste, right? He wants to stay in the limelight, perhaps. That's my view of it. But so a lot of people have different ideas about what's actually going on. Let's talk about that. He put out one of his main proposals with this stupid special session where, all the legislators are grumbling and they have to walk back and crawl back to Sacramento and they can't be at home sleeping in their own beds unless they represent Sacramento. So he calls everyone back. And one of his big proposals is, okay, there's price gouging. All these oil and gas companies, all those energy companies, they're the enemy. They're just charging more. Now, magically, they can charge just more here in this state, but they can't in other states. We don't need to get into the basic economics of that. But he's claiming it's essentially price gouging or artificially kind of price fixing to bump prices up, make a lot of money, to screw over Californians who drive, yada, 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 whatever. But he comes up with the economically illiterate idea of forcing refiners in this state to keep an extra inventory of gasoline, which is a produced product. It's a manufactured product that comes from crude oil. Crude oil, has all different kinds of weights. Some of it's more like tar. Some of it's more almost like kerosene. But he's going to force refiners to keep a perishable product in refineries. Gasoline is perishable, everyone, by the way, as many of you know. So you can't keep it indefinitely
It's also
on the shelf.
combustible, by the way.
It's also combustible. And so, Mike, let's have a Socratic a deal here, a question back and forth. That's kind of fun. What happens when you withhold a product that a marketplace is hungry for, that a marketplace wants, but you say, let's hold some back? Do prices tend to go up with that reduced supply, or do they go down?
Well, of course they go up. And let's start
Exactly.
Let's start, before we get to the core of this, I want to start with one of the basic differences. It's not Republicans versus Democrats, it's common sense. I'm going to call it the left versus even the extreme right. Fair enough? Okay?
Sure.
Is that the left, socialism, at its core, which is what the Democrats want to do, is believe in controlling private enterprise. I cannot stress how bad an idea this is. They do this continually by trying to micromanage parts of a free enterprise system. Supply and demand are the basic parts of a free enterprise system. Greg, I'm not that old, but I'm close. But I don't believe when the internal combustion engine came along, they outlawed the horse. Is that fair enough?
Great point. They did not, Mike.
Okay. Yet Gavin thinks that by simply outlawing gas-powered cars, it will solve many things because we're going to force people to buy electric cars. And just think about that at its basic fact. If electric cars are better, can be made cheaper, more efficiently in the US, people will buy them. If gas companies can sell oil companies can sell their gasoline for a price, that's what they're going to do. You think they would be saying, make more gas efficient cars, and that will drive it down. If you remember during COVID, you literally could get paid to take barrels of oil. Oil was at a negative figure because
I
there was
remember
too
well.
much oil and nobody driving. So now Gavin's brilliant idea, don't tell anybody, I'm being facetious when I say brilliant, okay, is we're going to take a bunch of gas, to your point, which is combustible, perishable, probably a really bad idea. And why do you really think about that for a second? Where would they put these tanks?
Got me. I have no idea what his proposal is.
No one does. That's the problem.
Right.
It actually was covered. I'm following these sessions fairly closely, and even some of the Democrats professors are going, excuse me, where are we putting these tanks?
Yes.
And somebody goes, well, that's a really good question, which is typical of Gavin and the crew. And let me explain why I opened with that salvo. Because they don't care. Because what they are proposing, just like the gas-powered cars, and forget the nitty-gritty of it for a second, because you're smarter than me, not much of a compliment, I'm not that bright. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. They're trying to legislate something like the gas power, like all electric cars by 2030, 35, that takes place when they're on to their next job. Okay? This
Right.
is like me telling you, Greg, I'm going to regulate what you're going to eat after you're dead. Think about that for 1 second. So they make these proposals, and none of the people doing this have any skin in the game. You
That's right.
you can't even build an ADU in California barely
Correct.
without CEQA environmental. And let me ask you, Greg, again, you've got a big background in fuel and energy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Would you argue with me that California has a problem with wildfires?
I would not have that argument with you, Mike. I would lose if I did argue with you on that
Okay.
one.
Then can somebody explain to me how putting really huge tanks of combustible fuel in California, and forget climate change or not, I'm not here to argue that, but I will concede the fact that some summers are hotter than ever and that wildfires come along.
We're in
Now,
agreement there.
obviously,
Yeah.
I'm kind of an idiot, but is putting a really big tank of combustible fuel that's full at all times, that is somewhere in California, which is probably going to have to be close to the population because the gas has to get here from there, a really good idea?
Well, it sounds like a terrible idea. It sounds like something maybe PG&E likes this idea because it takes the heat off of them, so to speak, for starting wildfires. But no, it's a bad idea, Mike. Absolutely.
That's kind of my point. Just that one aspect in a simple soundbite. Now, this is how bad an idea it is, okay? Let's go into where our gas and oil comes from. Yes, we pay way too much in taxes. And by the way, the taxes that we pay are supposed to go to repairing our roads. Okay?
Huh.
I'm 8 suspensions in after driving the freeways of Southern California because many of our roads really, and this is a facetious statement, but if the United States ever got into a world war and the enemy came over here and looked at the California roadways, they would think, we are behind. Somebody has bombed them already. Because many of them have potholes which are large enough that in many countries would be called lakes. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, so that's not working out well for us, but let's put that down. So the average price of gasoline is about 40% higher than California. But back to my original statement, Gavin knows that it touches the average person. And the average person really isn't cognizant of their electric bill. They're
Correct.
simply cognizant of the fact that when they go to fill up their gasoline tank, they had to sell something to do that at this point or work
Right.
overtime.
Hopefully
Whether
not
it's
someone related to them. Yeah.
it might be if you got a big family who misses a kid, you know what the hell, right? That's why people used to have 9 kids, you could sell one. No, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious, but you
Not
get my
good. Not
drift.
good. Right.
It's too high priced. So Gavin Newsom makes the hyperbole that he will kick the can down the road by making it lower. Now, a little bit about where the West gets its oil, which turns into gas. And I want to make this a simple lesson. Oil turns into gas. Fair
Yes,
enough?
in an industrial process and a refinery. That's
Forget how it
correct.
gets here from
Yeah.
there. You have
Yeah.
more oil, you can make more gas. Okay?
Correct.
California sits on a pretty big gas reserve, which we use to produce many things. One is the gas in our car. 2 is the rubber, which goes into my web camera. It goes in producing petroleum products, a lot of things. So just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So many years ago, the environmental, and look, everybody wants to breathe fairly clean air. No one wants to live by a belching smokestack. Greg, I've met a lot of people in my lifetime. I've never met anybody that wants to move to Hong Kong so they can breathe crappy air. That's why I'm going to Hong Kong. We all like to occasionally see the mountains in LA and make sure they still exist. I get it. But there's a point where we've gone too extreme and we pump very little oil out of the ground in California.
Correct.
Now, for everyone out there, even if it's electric, I'll put that down because I don't want to go too deep. That doesn't mean we use less oil and gas. We produce less oil and gas. You quoted me a figure before the show. What was it? That was it? It used to be 1 million. Now it's 300,000 barrels a day.
That's right. Yeah, it's back in 1985, California, when it was a free euro market. It wasn't it wasn't like a beautiful anarcho-capitalist society. But in 1985, California produced over 1 million barrels of oil per day. And now, Mike, we are rapidly declining, and most of that is largely due to state legislation and regulation. Now, all oil fields do decline over their natural lifespan. The problem is we're not able to go out and discover more oil and gas
Oil,
fields.
right.
Correct, because usually those replace what's declined in the past. That's the natural lifespan. But to the point, to make this quick, we were at over 1 million back in 1985. And now in the year 2024, we are rapidly approaching producing just 300,000 barrels of oil, a little over 300,000 in state. Now, as you mentioned, we still have a huge hunger, appetite, thirst, whatever metaphor you want to use. We want a lot of oil and gas products. And so what's happening is we are importing more and more oil, crude oil, from places around the world. That's fine if you're agnostically just capitalistic, it's a market. The problem is it's coming from dangerous regimes. It's coming from other places around the world, which do not have the human rights records or what have you. And maybe even more importantly, or very importantly, Newsom and his cronies are putting Californians out of work who would love to produce more oil and gas here in this state. So we're rapidly squelching California's oil and gas industry from over 1 million to 300,000 barrels a day. That's being done on purpose. Yet, as you mentioned, our appetite or our consumption of oil and oil products is not really going down. Despite the Democrats saying, oh, magically, we're just going to kind of put our thumb on your demand. Well, supply is going down from in-state, but demand, even though they're trying to squelch it down, it's not really diminishing. And I think these were some of the points that you were making and referring to. So we've got a fundamental supply and demand imbalance, and now we're importing like 75% of our oil from foreign sources when we have a lot sitting in the ground here that could be produced in the most environmentally safe, clean, and responsible way by far, much more so than Iraq and Ecuador and some other places. So sorry to jump
And it's
in there, but
interesting that
continue.
something that we
Yeah.
don't know. So a couple things that people aren't aware of, and again, I've been involved in politics since the recall about 4 years now. And you read the press, it's like, oh my God, Russia, whatever. For everyone out there, I will buy you a home if you walk the pipeline that brings oil from the East Coast to the West Coast. Greg, why am I never going to have to pay up on that bet?
It sounds like a trick question because California is an oil island. We don't have a pipeline that comes into our state for oil.
Oh, damn it. I never thought of that, Greg. Looks like I win. Okay. And I think that's important for people to note. And that's important for a lot of reasons. The thing to note with what Gavin is doing, how bad an idea this special session is, okay, is to understand that there is no oil pipeline, folks, running from Canada to the west, running from the east. There is not one.
Or Texas. Yeah.
Or
No.
Texas. Can't do it because getting through the Rocky Mountains, well, Elon Musk needs to get that boring company moving a lot quicker. And of course, we can't get that approved because of the environmental geeks. And going down a bit of an Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole for a second, I want to be specific on that because people always wonder, what's with the rabbit hole? It's Lewis Carroll, just to let you know. But in honor of Lewis Carroll, let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. For folks out there buying into the hyperbole, if you will, that not drilling in California helps the environment, helps the public, it is an expletive deleted lie. Now, let me explain something. If you want to build a building in California and you want to use marble, you can't bring that marble over from China or a foreign country. Do you know why that is?
I don't know specifically.
Specifically, they say, because bringing over that marble, and by the way, you don't continuously use marble like oil, so just roll with me here, okay?
Right.
You buy marble for your house once, you buy materials, and they say, no, no, no. You must source them from the United States or from California because bringing them over on ships adds to the carbon footprint, right?
Oh, sure. Right. All the
Okay,
bunker
that's
fuel and
California
whatnot.
run amok, all right?
Right.
I got a really dumb question for you morons running the state. If this is true, and I'll buy your hyperbole for 1 second, then how is it really good for the carbon footprint to bring this oil by ship into California all the time? Because these ships consume a lot of energy, bringing our energy in that we could use at home. But hold on, I'm on a roll before I run out of time. Stand back, turn your speakers down slightly with what I'm saying next. This is such a stupid idea that Gavin is doing in a special session, trying to legislate something down the road, keep oil companies from drilling. So stupid that they actually had someone testify on their side. Hey, it's only close to 10% of California's economy. How can it hurt? 10%? That's a pretty good chunk, you idiots. And by the way, we do lead the nation. Oh, we're number 2 now in the unemployment rate, but let's put that down.
Well,
This
and
is
also,
how
let me just interject. I don't want to get you off a roll there. It's very, very important for the inland counties, the Kern County, for Kings County, some of those counties where it makes up a huge chunk of their county budget, right?
Oh, let's expand upon that. It is such a bad idea. Yes. And not only people's day-to-day employment takes away all the country's employment on the oil industry, but this isn't a matter of opinion or diving deep into economics. This is literally such a bad idea that the state of Nevada, however you say it, because I mispronounce everything, and the Democratic governor of Arizona, Katie Hobbs, and their respective legislature wrote a letter to Gavin Newsom in the California legislature. And Greg, we don't have a lot of time, so could I sum up that letter for you?
Please go ahead.
It said WTF. You can fill in what that stands for.
Right.
Okay?
Very quick letter.
That's really
very
what
brief.
it said. It had a nice last words around it. They went, guys, we don't want our gas prices to be like Californians.
Yes.
And then, of course, they sent a picture. I think they sent all free copies of a basic economics book, but I might be making that
Yeah,
up.
they sent him Thomas Sowell and I think maybe
Right.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith and these guys, and said, look, morons, the more you take out of the supply chain and store it, it affects our states. Because we tried to take Netter up on his free offer, they didn't say that specifically, and walk this pipeline that brings our oil in, and we found there isn't one. Okay? Right. And so we get our oil from California, who you import a lot of the soil on these ships, which comes to the ports, and away we go. This is such a bad idea that Gavin has that his own state legislature was revolting. The head of the state Senate, Mike McGuire, said, I don't even want to look at this. Why are you doing this?
Right.
And Gavin's answer was, I have a pretty face, or something like that. The scoreboard it's just a bad idea.
It's very bad. It's very bad. And if I could just jump in there, I think it's Nevada
jump in quickly, Greg, because if you haven't noticed, it is your show. But you invited me as
Yes.
the rat in the building, so I will take over.
No, I don't want to. Hey, you're on a roll. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. But I was just going to say, because you had so many great points there. I think Nevada gets something like 90% of their refined gas products from California. That's gasoline to the layman.
Right.
And Arizona's 50% or vice versa. It's 50 and 90%. So as you mentioned so correctly, the governors of these states are not even really being partisan. They're just kind of saying, hold on. We get half of our gasoline and we get 90% of our gasoline from the refineries in that state. California is an oil state, folks, believe it or not. Nevada and Arizona do not have the geology. They're not oil states. So they're saying, hold up. You're going to cause California-like gas prices in our states, and we don't want it. Now the question is, Mike, why would Newsom do something so stupid? I've heard some crazy speculation. You can swat it down, or you can tell me you agree or don't agree with this. But I've heard ideas like Newsom is so incensed at Kamala getting in. Of course, he wants her to lose because he wants 28. He doesn't want to have to wait 8 years. That's my opinion. But I've heard that Newsom actually wants to drive up gas prices intentionally in Arizona and Nevada, which happen to be really important swing states that Kamala probably needs to win. And he wants to make it more difficult for her to win those crucial Western Sunbelt states because he's looking at his run in 2028. He doesn't want to wait till 2032. What do you think about that nutty idea? I've heard that one
I
tossed
think,
around.
like a lot of Democratic ideas, let me sum this up for you. I don't think it matters if it's inept or evil. It's a lot of both. And I always use the metaphor or analogy, if you will. Was it manslaughter or murder? Well, I don't know. The dude who did that in the sidewalk is still dead. At the end of the day, they're still dead.
True.
Whether it's inept or evil is irrelevant to me. Sorry to say this to you. Of course, we open the show saying these Democratic politicians don't care about their state. There's a political agenda. Okay? That's the evil part of it. But the reality is this: they're stupid. I want you to really think about something about Gavin by his own admission as we wind down here. Good looking guy, so I'm told. Doesn't do much for me. Gavin Newsom, by his own admission, has dyslexia. Right? He doesn't read very well. Is that fair enough?
I did not know that, but
Okay,
yeah.
that's all over. Gavin talks about it. He doesn't read very well. That's why he avoids using teleprompters, etc., etc. So what does that mean? That means the governor of the biggest state in the union gets most of his information fed to him. He isn't out there doing what you and I do, reading his own reports, etc. Somebody is presenting him data. So it's not only Gavin, Gavin is the point person for the infrastructure around him, giving him bad information. Some of this stuff is so stupid, and we could fill 6 hours with the stupid stuff that they do. It's not even logical enough to be evil. It's just stupid. Flat out flippin' stupid.
Well, let me ask you, Mike, why, in your opinion here, before we have to wrap up, I know you have a heart out. Why did he call the special session then? How's it going to end? Where's it going? And why did he call it?
So Gavin
the
Newsom
big
is
picture?
throwing a temper tantrum for a couple reasons. It's not just the presidential aspirations. Let's put
Okay.
that down. Prop 36, and everybody out there, yes, on 36. I opened with Prop 47, or maybe it was the other show I did it, but Prop 47 was on the ballot because only 7.2 million people voted, period. Okay? Prop 36 will reverse much of that damage. Gavin Newsom tried to put a bunch of stuff in to put booby traps in a Prop 36 voted on by the people of California. Looks like it's going to pass 70 to 36. Gavin is frustrated by that. Okay? His own legislature is frustrated by Gavin. The Democrats are melting down and fighting. So Gavin is passing some bills. There's way too many bills in California.
Right.
The reality is the Democrats themselves are starting to feel threatened because there is a point in any, see Julius Caesar, et tu, Brute, or you probably not like exactly like he said it, but close enough. Genghis Khan, in any regime, which we have in California, where it hits a tipping point.
Right.
And you're seeing that with people moving out, the illegal immigration, the crime. Water bills in LA are going up by 40%.
Yes.
For various reasons that we don't have time to discuss. Electricity rates are going through the roof for various reasons we don't have time to discuss. So the Democrats generally think if they can gather and say, look, we're doing more regulation, it looks okay to the public in an election year and will help some of these people because the party of apathy will get them reelected. That's why they're doing this.
Yeah. The appearance of being busy, the appearance of doing something for the people, maybe. It's all about the optics, as they say. That's essentially where
Do
we're
you
at.
realize that California is on something, give or take, AB 3287? They finished the session. Do you know what that means?
It means there were way too many bills that were sent up to
Each
through the
year they
legislature.
start over.
Yeah.
That means California this year alone, as they do every year, proposed over 3,300 bills.
It's
Now, good news is, I've
insane.
made to the governor's desk, only about 2,000 of them did. That's every year.
Yeah.
That's every year. Lobbyists, consultants, special interests dig a niche to regulate our lives more.
Yeah.
And Greg, ending on this note, let me make it really simple. You're called the California Liberty Project. It's a great name. And you're called the California Liberty Project because liberty means freedom of choice. Is that fair enough?
Yeah. Freedom to pursue the good. That's right.
Freedom to pursue whatever you like. Hell, pursue the evil if you want. But pursue, if you want to pay too much for gas,
We
go to
don't
the corner
encourage that,
store and
but
do it.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we don't
Point taken.
encourage it. But the reality is, it's freedom. I have the freedom to make bad choices if I want to.
Correct.
I don't need the government telling me what my bad choices should be. Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay? Freedom. The problem that we have in California, when you have a one-sided government, it takes away our freedoms. And that is really what this oil bill is really all about. To take, look, if stashing oil because they could sell it at a better price for less, because by the way, Chevron, picking them, has competition. Freedom means the free market. The oil bill, like many of these bills, is about taking away our freedoms and choices. Freedom of who can live in, how dense the housing can be in our neighborhood, about how much we pay in taxes, about what our taxes are used for, about what we pay for electricity, our accessibility to water if you want it, about the ability to stand up and say, you're not solving the homeless problem, it's getting worse. I want the freedom to do something about it. Freedom to stand up and say, I've had enough of the crime which is going on. California Liberty Project, I'm going to guess, stands for freedom. And the scoreboard is, at the end of the day, this oil session, this hyperbole about Kamala Harris is going to regulate prices at grocery stores. If I don't like the prices, I have the freedom to what?
Shop
Not
elsewhere.
shop there. Go
Correct.
somewhere else. Let the market take care of itself. If I don't like the price of gas, how about I let Amazon deliver because I have the freedom to pick where I want to buy from.
That's right.
We think of freedom in the context of this conversation, yes, the religious and social beliefs, which I'm all for of. But freedom means opening up the economy to making economic choices which are good for me and voting with my economic choices. I need the ability to do that, and that's what this special session is all about. Fair enough?
Sure. Yeah.
Rebuild California is about rebuilding these freedoms. Go to our website, rebuildcalifornia.com. Follow me on LinkedIn, Mike Netter. I'm easy to find, not hard to forget. Go to KABC or follow my radio shows, my podcast, Outraged. Follow me on Twitter, or X as Elon called it, because after 44 billion, all you got left is enough for one letter.
And Mike is a good follow on for all of you guys, and you're all interested in California stuff, obviously, here on the podcast. He's a great follow on Twitter. He's probably a top 10 for me for California news and current events and politics. So I got to interject there, Mike. They got to follow you on X.
That. Do that. Go to Google Netter News. Do that. On Facebook, follow me at Mike Netter. But take some action. I'm going to leave it at this, Greg, before I sign off. Okay? Everyone out there, no one's coming to save you. Let me be really clear on that. There is no superpower going to come down from a mountain. We can dive deep into the issues, and we do this for your information. But take some damn action. Whether it is signing up for a candidate, follow me on social media, getting involved in a local cause, donating $10 to us, Rebuild California, spreading the word about a podcast like this. It's up to you. Don't rely that someone else is voting. It's not your problem. It is. And every day that problem gets closer and closer to your life, to the point now where it's on your front lawn. You cannot afford to wait any longer. The revolution which needs to take place isn't going to take place with guns and ammo. It's going to take place by defeating the Democrats, the one-party rule, by beating the party of apathy. You have to give a damn about something, and you have to go out there and take some kind of action, whether it's telling the clerk at the corner store, have you voted? Do you agree you're paying too much at the pump? It's vote for change, because Californians, it's not working. It's your damn state, and it's up to you to take it back. Don't look to moving to Tennessee or Idaho, because I got news for you. California, if you haven't got it from this podcast, has one great export: bad politicians. And we're shipping them to Washington every day of the week. And it's up to you to curtail that export and get us to import less things like oil. Again, I'm proud to be Mike Netter. I'm proud to be a co-chair of Rebuild California. And we're proud to do something because, again, we're here to inspire you to make a move, follow me, do something, spread the word about this podcast. Make sure you make a move and conquer the party of apathy. Thanks, Greg, for having me on. I really appreciate it today.
Mike Netter, thank you very much. I love the passion. I love that you're spreading the word. I love that you're doing something, and you're absolutely right. For everyone here, start with something small, move up to bigger things if you can, but Mike is absolutely right. Love it, Mike. Thank you for your time. I know you got a hard out here. We'd love to have you back again sometime, and thanks for the passion. Thank you for being a Californian who loves his state. So have a great weekend.
Thank you. I look forward to being back on again. Greg, again, appreciate it. Thank you,
Thanks for your time. Peace to you, Mike.
This has been the California Liberty Project podcast. Make sure to subscribe, share it with others, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter.